practice. It looks like a small number of us are showing up, but tried and true. I know there's a number of people that will be joining us that told me they'd be on the call. But we could probably start with a quick introduction. So I think everybody here knows me, Jamie, and Sarah, do you want to start from Cloudburst on our side?
Sure. Hi guys, it's Sarah Khan. I have not been, I guess none of us have been on a call together in a couple of months, but I think even before that, it's been a few months since I've been on a call. I work with Jamie on a few of our data initiatives here at Cloudburst, and also provide technical assistance with communities and help communities figure out strategies to practically, look at their data and use performance data in coordination with other data sources to really drive systems change and drive smart decision making and resource allocation at the local level. So nice to be with you guys again.
Great. And how about Virginia? I think I see Margot and Becky are here.
This is Margot. I'm here from Richmond, Virginia, homeward.
Hi, this is Becky with the Planning Council. We're down in Norfolk, Virginia.
Hey, Becky. And Dee, I think you're the lone person I see there from Utah.
Yeah, I think so far at least. Yeah, my name is D. Norton. I'm with the Road Home here in Utah, Salt Lake City.
Great. And Melissa, Indiana?
Yeah, my name is Melissa Wall, and I'm the project manager for the data integration project in Indiana between the COCs and the Medicaid entities.
Great. And who else is on the call?
This is Andrea.
From Virginia. Hey, Andrea.
Yes.
Great. Who else hasn't identified themselves yet?
Hey, Jamie. This is Andrea.
Oh, hey, Andrea. Welcome. Anyone else on the call? Okay, I was looking at two more people, Tim, who are actually going to be sharing today, Tim Huffman from St. Louis and also Rachel Steed from Cloudburst. So we'll see if they join us. For today's call, we are so excited for you to both see this, and also for those of you like Dee, who's the sole person, or Melissa, sole person here from your state, to really go and bring this back, set up a call, literally set up a planned call, not informally but formally, and share this new URL that we've been developing and go over with them the same way we're going to go over with you all. So it's really, I kind of thought this would happen for 2019, right? That there would be fewer people on the call, but this is really to introduce back what is an incredible resource of all the tools and webinars and documents that we've been presenting out. Nobody's actually been on all calls. In the way we've done the training, it's also been iterative. When we did it in your site, there are definitely changes that have been made. Every site, there's new changes and new things added. So we put everything together into a URL, which we're going to walk through with you all, so you all see it. We're also going to dive deeper into a specific tool, a data maturity assessment tool that Sarah's going to present out that has been tested out, still is in a iterative format, as is the URL itself, but also very, very, very usable, and is a very good foundational tool. And then hopefully Tim will be on with us to talk about what he's working on with the community practice work plan activities. And we're going to touch upon the rapid rehousing research article and talk about the next community practice state. So Ross, because Rachel's not on yet, just I just need someone to remind me to send out to you all the PowerPoint that will have the URL linkage, or maybe Sarah could. Like Rachel would normally do this. It's my external memory file, but I want to make sure you get the PowerPoint because this is actually going to have the link for the URLs on it that we're going to dive into.
Okay.
So somebody, if I don't, thank you, Ross. Great. So we're just going to jump in. You know, we had I don't know if anyone remembers the URL that we did have developed. I'm actually going to not do this. Oh, there's Rachel. Yay. So I'm going to just go into my computer that I already have it set up. So I don't know if anyone remembers the URL that we did have. But either way, what we did is update this in the last few months. We had a team of people working on it. Andrea Miller is on the call. She was working on it, as was our, we have a wizard, actually, a kind of a website wizard inside of Cloudburst, and then Rachel Speed, who's now caller number 10. Also,
yeah, Jamie, just to interrupt, there were two GoToMeetings. I don't know why. So some people were on another call that I was on. So I'm just sending this info to those people.
I'm here.
Oh.
Huh.
Is that Tim?
I don't know. It's never happened before. Very weird. But anyway.
Yes.
Weird.
Maybe it was a hangover left over from another time. There's ghosts.
Yeah, because I was sitting there and it was just Tim and I. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, good. But Tim's on too. Anyone else? So Tim's, we already introduced you as someone coming, Tim, from St. Louis, yeah?
Yep.
Great. Anybody else new join the call? So what we're doing again is charging everyone in, including you, Tim, to set up a call in your own site for the people that you want to share this with, and go over this URL with them. So this really is a deep investment that's been made mainly by HUD, funded, but really over time, this has been in development, I would say the last year and a half when we originated the community practice training. But since then, we've been iterating tools and documents and resources. And what we're doing is giving this out to you all, for you to give out to your people that you're working with, because we want these tools to be both used as they are, adapted, broken apart. You cannot touch the website, but you can download everything and then change it as you need it for your own local community practice planning. So it really is to take everything, share it intentionally, and support the use of these tools in many different formats, actually. So we're still in the iterative phase, but we would love any feedback as you go through this. Just send an email to me and Rachel, to just Rachel, to Sarah, whoever you want to email with what your thoughts are about updating this, because we really value that. And so this is a landing page, the home page, and the way we've set it up across here is you get to go in by these titles up here. You also get to go in by these icons here. So you could double click any of these. We have presented these resources out in the data detection trainings and in the community practice. The data maturity assessment tool we touched upon very briefly on a call. One time we did an iteration call. It was also presented at the NHSDC last fall by Sarah, for anyone who might have attended that session. So it might very well be a tool that you're not familiar with. Sarah's going to walk us through that after we go through the other components and materials. But you'll see how incredible it is, and really the reason it's first in this lineup is because we see it as a foundational tool to really help kick off any local efforts and help set guidelines, baseline, and then use that to set goals for your own data maturity training. What you're most familiar with is the data to action training. Well, I don't know if everyone's the most familiar with, but this is the core backbone of what we've been doing in the full day training. We don't actually expect anyone to do a full day training, though I've heard Margot talk about possibly her and Becky doing one of those in Virginia. And if you do, that's great. But if not, any component and piece of this can be broken apart and done in any amount of time, or incorporate these tools in your own right now ongoing continuum of care committees. So the training slide deck here is really the backbone. This is the latest slide deck here. The is linked on. I don't really feel like going to it, then I have to come back, but it is again like the backbone spine of all the training components. We've put it in many places on the website because of that, because we again want you to take it and use even just 1 or 2 slides if that's what's appropriate to your particular training. But I'm going to let Rachel walk through the training components, which we have here connected by topical area. So I'm just going to let Rachel walk us through it, and we're going to again take notes, and you're going to send us notes and anything that you want to see iterated as we go.
Mm-hmm. Super, thank you. Ross, can you make it so that my screen has control?
Oh, yes, 1 second.
While we're doing that, I'm going to show you like this. These are the different components of the training that all the tools are underneath.
Sorry.
Oh, good. You stole it already away. Okay, go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, super. So can everybody see that my screen? I'm on the same D2A training homepage that Jamie had opened up for you before. And as she was saying, it is organized according to the same modules of the slide deck. And the slide deck is really the foundation of this section of the website. So for example, I'm just going to open up the overview section here. So each of the D2A training modules has its own subpage on the site. And as we scroll down, they all have, some of them have different activities or different knowledge briefs. So we've organized the materials both within the training section and also at the end in the compendium section, which Jamie is going to explain to you in greater detail. So if we scroll down here, the first thing we have is a link for the data maturity assessment tool, which Sarah is going to go into more detail later. And then we can continue down, and it explains the methodology of the trainings and the thought process that went into cloud-burst development of them. So you can, at the bottom of the website, you can always click back or forward to the next module, or you can reach the next module, the modules from the home page of the training. So if we click module 2, it brings us to the data action cycle, which I believe that most of you are familiar with. And then we describe the data action framework down here, and then you'll see that there are different supporting materials. So we have below the building a performance culture, you'll see there's a performance culture self-assessment tool. So when you click on that, it will either bring you to a PDF or a Word document that's directly related to the description above. If you continue down further.
Can I just say something for an example, though? So if that performance assessment tool, for instance, is a PDF document and you want it as a Word, then let us know that. So the Word documents are things you can change yourself, which you want the flexibility to do. Anything that's in a PDF, you can always ask us to make sure you have access to that in Word. So this one is in Word, it looks like. But it's just an example of everything is here to serve you. So if you hit click onto something and you'd like to see it in a different format, to let us know.
Exactly. And one of the reasons we tried to keep many of them in Word and in PowerPoint is to make them easier for you to adapt for your own local needs. Because I know sometimes it can be a bit of a pain if you have a PDF and you want to then start editing it or changing it. So if we continue on down here, the third component of the overview section is the data to action cycle. So similarly to the performance management, it has a link to the poster that you may find useful. And then we'll continue to the next module. We're just doing a brief overview because it would take, hours to go through all these materials, and most of you are familiar with them from your own training. So we just want to kind of show you how to navigate the website. So the next section of the D2A training is knowledge sharing. And this is the area where primarily we have most of the knowledge briefs located, which are really good 1- and 2-page snapshots of either pressing issues or current research on critical homeless service system topics. So if we scroll down, for example, this is a list of some of the knowledge sharing briefs by topic type here. And then each grouping of knowledge briefs may have its own activities or suggested usage, which also tie back to the slide deck, which is the core of the training. The next section is arguably the most important section because this is a section that shows now how we have this data, how do we use the data, and how do we utilize it to frame data-driven decision making. So if we scroll down here, this will show you an example of, I believe this example of a data case problem. So the data case problems help you think about ways to identify problems in the data or issues in the data using your dashboards and then translate those findings directly into action. So the data case problems are great to be used as training tools and adapted in your own local communities. So here is a link to a bunch of data case problems that'll open up on a new page. And here's a link to a template for prioritizing action. So once you do identify what your data issues are, you can go through several steps to prioritize how you want to address those data challenges, which I believe you're familiar with from the training. And then similarly, we'll have activities surrounding active listening. This is actually coming soon. And then activities surrounding data uses and limitations, which is similar to the community of practice session we had a few months back on that topic. And here as well, we have some links to some websites that might be relevant to the module's topic, which we'll put at the bottom of each page whenever it's relevant. So if you click the bottom tab here, it will bring you to activity 1, which is data case problems. So I'll just click through these so you can see. This is what the data case problems section looks like. We can click, Jamie, should we open up one of the data case problems?
Sure, because, yeah, we can, because the thing is these are going to change also. Each time we update these with new dashboards or new case problems, we'll change them. And there are also ones you could use as models because you're going to have your own dashboards in many of the sites. And you could use this, I think, should also be in Word. So you can use the formatted doc page itself to just plop in your own snapshot of the dashboard page you want to show for your own exercise, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have a variety of data case problems here, which would be great for trainings. And then similarly, we have knowledge briefs that can be used either in conjunction or before or after your case problems, depending on how you're running your training. But they complement each other, which can be quite useful.
Hey, this is Sarah. I just have a comment on a case problem because I think what's been really interesting, something that we learned along the way doing the trainings, and Jamie, I think you've probably continued to see that sometimes it actually feels more productive to have dummy data or a data from a different community, just because when you're using your own data for the purposes of the training, a lot of times people get really stuck on the numbers and kind of digging into the data quality and all of these issues as opposed to like being able to feel free to like go through the exercise of the training. So just something to think about if you decide to do this training with your own community members. It can be beneficial sometimes, depending on what the purpose of the training is, to sometimes just use dummy data in those situations.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Sarah. And we are doing a training in early March in San Diego. They do have active dashboards, so they will actually use, they will do a more in-depth training on the dashboards. Their own local data leader will do that. So it's not like you don't do that, incorporate that. Once you have active dashboards, you want to be creating data literacy around that. But when you're focused on the data case problems, the use case problems, it's really about the process of looking at data to move them through that process, which you don't, if you're doing it as a training, you're training the process. So that's different than putting it into Vivo. If you're actually finding a data issue in the data, then you actually put into play the whole active listening prioritization action work plan in Vivo. So it's two different things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts? It's probably a good point for that now, so far. Okay, well, we'll just continue walking you through the website then. So if I click down here on sure.
Great, so I have a comment on knowledge briefs. Like I remember we did get ideas from you, Margot, at one point. Like any thoughts you have about additional knowledge briefs? We're running the community practice now through a HUD work plan through September with you all, at least through August, hopefully through September. And so we have time and support to be able to develop additional knowledge briefs, or even develop for your training a specific addition to, say, active listening tool, or addition to secondary data sets, or a different addition. So if you, most in particular the knowledge briefs, because what we have on our staff is capacity to quickly research and update what are best practices in the field and summarizing that knowledge. So let us know when you're really activating these. If you want more, we're here to serve. Yeah.
And similarly, if you come across interesting articles or things that you think would be beneficial to be shared to the group, we can update and edit the website as needed. You know, we can create a section for interesting research. So we're open to your ideas as to how to make this website most useful for you in your own local setting. Okay, so the next activity that comes up after the knowledge briefs and the data action problems is prioritizing action. So you can read through this on your own, and then similarly, it has a template for that process. And then the third activity here is active listening, which is described in greater detail in the slide deck, and we also have a tool for evaluating active listening that will be uploaded here as well. Okay. And then the fourth activity pertains to data limitations, which is linked back to the playbook here. I'm not sure. I think that this section probably is missing something looking at it right here, because I think there should be a specific link. So we'll have to make a note to check that. So the next module is data interpretation and guidance using secondary data. So this section is related to the community of practice that Jamie led a few months ago, where we identified several secondary data resources that are both websites and online tools primarily that can sometimes provide the background and illuminate some of your data if you're struggling with it. So if you scroll down here, this brings you to the handout on secondary data sources, which I'll click on. So similarly, this is a Word document, and this really summarizes some phenomenal secondary data sources that I really encourage you to check out, because they are really useful in providing that background that definitely goes beyond what HMIS local data can tell you. Okay. And then the sixth module is related to data storytelling. So I'm not sure how many of you were on Andrea's community of practice that took place, I believe it was in December, where she went through data visualization and data storytelling techniques and different programs for that. But this summarizes some of those tools and provides you here a 5-step process for good data storytelling, and then instructions for how to do the training and how to run the activities and group exercises. And then lastly, we have a section on review and evaluation. So if you do run trainings and want to have an evaluation at the end to gather feedback, here's a section with some tools and activities on how to best do that, with an evaluation form here that can be used. Okay. So that is basically a very brief outline of the D2A training section, which can also be, if you click up here on your header, you get back to the main page. And then the next major section of the website would be the community of practice. And Jamie, did you want to go through that, or should I just go through that quickly?
Oh, no, you can, Rachel.
Okay, so the community of practice is very straightforward. It's where we've grouped all of the PowerPoints and video recordings for the 7 community practice sessions we've had so far. So this is sort of the community practice homepage. It provides a brief summary of each session, and then you can click on the session and it brings you to any tools that were provided in that session, as well as articles or resources. So this was the first one. It just has the PowerPoint presentation here and the recording above, but some of the others may also have relevant articles or other types of resources. And toolkits as well. Some of the ones that had Excel toolkits, those would be located on the individual pages that correspond to each community of practice. Okay. And then the last major section of this is the compendium, the resource compendium, and I'll let Jamie explain our thought process here.
So we know that you'll go back and use these tools, maybe create a training date for yourself to locally do that. Maybe you'll follow the, go back and get the racial inequalities tool that Andrea did a community practice on, or the performance management tool that Sarah did. But we also thought that you might want to just go in and go right to one tool, like you might have in your mind, one thing, like active listening, which we'll get. The active listening handout is actually an evaluation framework for active listening. And it's very logical. In the training, we talk about active listening. We all actually know in our own lives what active listening is, but it's actually a way of measuring if your meetings, if you actually have COC meetings and you have a lot of people who are not listening to each other, like in our country, like what we don't do is actually hold ourselves to a consensus around using an evaluation kind of metric to assess how are we doing. If we agreed to be doing this active listening and really using best practices for paraphrasing what we heard, allowing for all kinds of ideas to come out, and agreeing to disagree as needed, the active listening evaluation form is a form you can use in your committee meetings. That it'll be hooked up next week. It's done. It's just not hooked up yet. And that form is something you may put in your head. You may have in your head and say, I know that was on the website. I want to go and just get that form for my upcoming meeting. I have, because I want us to instill that performance culture for ourselves around active listening. And so we can use that metric tool for both a training and a evaluation tool, self-assessment evaluation. So this compendium here is listing all of the tools by their topic and the type of tool it is, medium that it is, so that you can go right to the compendium and then find it very quickly. Rachel can just scroll down. Find it very quickly in this format, which is a singular linking by the topic areas, so that you can, again, access it quickly if it's something you want to use separately. So we're hoping that you can keep going down, Rachel. I think it's helpful to see also what's below, which is all those like knowledge briefs. The data case problems are there, the knowledge briefs are there. So there, it's a way to get, again, go quickly to something you may be using. What we hope is that this does become a site that we will be continuing to contribute to, for sure, but we hope you do use this in an active process locally, because if not, it's all for naught. Like, we had a lot of fun doing all this stuff, and we'll do more, but to what end, right? So before we go any farther with the big foundational tool, the maturity assessment tool, I'd really like to hear if anyone. I already know from Tim, and we're gonna hear from you later, Tim, on how you're actually planning to use these resources, or maybe we hear that now. Like we did check in with you and shared this website to get your feedback on it this week. So maybe you can kick off telling us your thoughts on this and how you might be using it.
Yeah, so we developed our dashboard last year and iterated a little, and we're basically, our situation is we are a group of 5 COCs, but we're more or less in a single identifiable region, and so we really used the dashboard as a way of creating an inter-COC data kind of clearinghouse, so that we could interact with and see each other's HMIS data. And so the community of practice that we're developing, we've used the dashboards to kind of forward our conversations about regional priority setting, and it helped us make a decision to try to end veteran homelessness this year. And so we're kind of aligning our data conversations around that new regional strategic priority of getting to functional zero for veteran homelessness across our region. And so kind of where we're at is we are in the process. We've got like a really cool creative team of people who are kind of committed to doing these data to action trainings. And we've done 3 of them kind of at the regional level. But when we get our hands on the most recent dashboard, we're going to drive that down to kind of a more COC level, or do them like in pairs of COCs together. And so we really are trying to integrate across all levels of our work. So to use this to inform COC decision making, but then also use it to inform regional decision making. And yeah, we love this training, and have done it in a couple of contexts. In a 4-hour, we did it in 4-hour settings. We've done it in 2-hour settings. 2 hours is pretty thin, but you can, even an hour and a half, you can get through a decent portion of it. But we're also in conversations about how to create data engagement events that are targeted for non-COC stakeholders. So like creating data museums or data exhibits, or how to connect like a landlord summit with HMIS data, but that's not like with a big PowerPoint and a training, but the way that we could like table different statistics. And anyway, that's a rambling summary of some of the things that we're up to. If anybody has questions, I'll give more details, but that's a summary.
Sounds good. It sounds like you have a little core of trainers with you. Is that what you did? Is that what you described in the beginning?
Yeah, so the way that it worked out is we had a data committee for our regional initiative. So there was like sort of a leadership arm, a service arm, and a data arm. And that group was like 27 people, and to say it was not very good at making decisions or getting anything done. And so from the kind of like committee of 27 people, we recruited a smaller subsection. So people who had been part of the initiative but really wanted to dig into the training. And so there's basically like 7 of us who are really committed to have done the trainings, and who meet together to kind of brainstorm and imagine. And to be perfectly honest, there's like 4 of us, me and 3 other people. with really radically different backgrounds. One of them's in communication and computer science. One of them's a veteran, and one of them's with the United Way. And we are all kind of situated in different ways with respect to clients and administration. And I think the diversity of that kind of like steering team has really added to how creatively we encounter it. We honestly stopped thinking about it as training. That was like an important thing. We're like, we want to like transform data and care, and we want care to be driven by data and data be treated with care. And so we started thinking like off the rails a little. And so instead of thinking of ourselves as trainers, we thought of ourselves as sort of like data activists for the sake of better care. And that started different ideas other than just the PowerPoint style training. It's really limbered us. So yeah, it's been great.
That's great.
That's cool. That was actually kind of getting to one of my questions. I was just curious if were there any other ways that you found it to be important to kind of like tailor the training, or I guess it's not called training anymore, but to tailor the quote unquote training for your local context? And if so, like what are some of the ways that you've adapted it to fit your needs? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, we have done the data to action training 3 times, and the last time we used our local data, and we absolutely ran into well, is this number right? And I'm not sure that's what it says on this website. And, there's some of that always happens when you use your own real data. And I have like mixed feelings about the value of that conversation, honestly. So I would say that my experience with the specific data to action training that's outlined on this website, like I love it. It's super great. And basically there's no component that I don't like, and there's not a lot that I would add. I think it's really well developed for a COC level audience, or COC, collaborative applicant, nonprofit audience. I think that if you're gonna bring together external stakeholders, people from healthcare and law enforcement and land trusts and things like this, you're going to get like a really dynamic group of community stakeholders. I'm not saying this training wouldn't work, but I think that our thinking is around data engagement as opposed to data training, because you really want, for us, we really want conversations to happen there and for people to be able to ask better questions, not actually to interact with specific HMIS data in more articulate ways. And so I think that's where our imagination is diverging with respect to this training. If that answers your question.
But Tim, could you see using the knowledge briefs with those?
Oh, for sure, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's different pieces of it you could see using. You're not actually preparing them to be data utilizers, but you're.
I love the knowledge briefs, and yeah, I would post that on my own personal Facebook page. Like I think that I think 2-page summaries is an important part of like our democracy functioning. It really is. Because we have like 100-page reports and then tweets, and there's got to be a middle ground, right? So I'm a fan.
That's great. Anybody else see themselves using this? Anyone in Virginia?
Jamie, just to add on to Tim's point, maybe we should consider knowledge briefs of some of the longer reports, creating 2-page summaries of some of the really relevant homeless service system reports that have come out in the last couple of years.
Very good idea. I'm laughing just because like what ones, but anyway, that's where our people will tell us in a topical area or a report you want summarized. Do
we have a knowledge brief for shared housing? I don't remember.
Yes, we do.
We have a draft of one, but we don't have. It's not on the site yet.
Okay.
But Rachel and I are shared housing queens, and so literally you should make sure we have that done soon. Yeah.
It would increase my ability to make that happen in my region by 150%. So
we're gonna do.
Well, then we'll definitely get that done.
Yeah, but we're also gonna do a community practice on shared housing, probably April.
Okay.
So that will also help, and that will have more tools too. But we'll get that done sooner than later.
Okay. Cool.
Jamie, we're definitely going to be using the knowledge briefs in Virginia. That's one of the things that I'm really excited about, because I think that, you know, we tend to forget that there are new people coming into the system. So when we're talking about something that is as simple as rapid rehousing, we just assume that everybody knows what we're talking about, but some people haven't come from homeless services, so they need to be educated about it. So I think that's also going to be really helpful with getting, you know, bringing new people into the fold.
Are you using other things too, Margot, on the other tools? Do you see on this website?
Oh, well, I think we're going to plan to do communities of practice. I'm not sure if we're going to do it with our Continuum of Care board, or if there's another group that we want to involve in something like that. But yeah, absolutely. You know, for the communities of practice, I see that being, you know, a way of bringing best practices out to people, and then having our leadership kind of decide where we're going to go with it.
Becky?
Yeah, I just think this whole site is such an amazing resource. I mean, we talk all the time on these calls even that we have such limited time to devote to this kind of thing. So just the fact that you guys have pulled this all together into one easy place for us to easily have it at our fingertips is just amazing. So thank you so much for putting that work in and that time, because now we can easily access these tools and use them and start implementing them, and not have to search through emails that we've gotten, or, you know, finding the great follow-up that you guys always do after the COP sessions, that it's all right here. And we are actually looking at implementing the performance management plan locally in a couple of our COCs. So that was a really great early tool that you brought to us several months ago now. And I think that that will be a good opening, sort of laying the groundwork for maybe expanding out into more of a formal data to action training for, we have a lot of different stakeholder groups, and I think different ones of them will benefit in different ways from it. But yeah, really excited to have this and start sharing it more broadly. Thank you.
Hey, but could you? Yeah. Oh, Kathy, good. Yep, Virginia.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to ask about my favorite tool, honestly, on all this is honestly the active listening evaluation tool that frames out active listening in there. So I just want, like, do you guys see yourself using the active listening tool in any way? Okay, we're gonna do a session. We're gonna do practice on active listening. Okay, I got it. We have to actually anchor it more.
Are we allowed to?
All right, I got my answer.
Yes.
I think one that I can think of a few partners who would definitely benefit from going through that, but trying to figure out the right audience at the right time. Because that's kind of like more of a, in my mind, like a retreat special team building sort of a thing. So I'm not sure where it would fit in like our current COC committee structure. But I think it's definitely valuable, and people need to have those skills when you start talking about data and how you're going to prioritize, because people, you know, are really tied to their populations, whether they serve primarily families versus singles. That's one that kind of are competing interests for us locally a lot of times. So it's really important to use those skills and let the data tell the story so that you can make good decisions and not kind of just root for your team, so to speak. So I definitely see value in it.
That's actually helpful feedback, which means we'd actually have to figure out a way to incorporate it so you can use it with ease and don't see it as a separate retreat kind of aspect of the training. Because it's something we all need, right? We all need it across the board for how do we accept and listen to differences. But what I'm hearing is you see it as something a little separate and maybe a little bit off-putting to impose onto the COC culture. So that's a good challenge for us to think about how to help you adapt that. Because somehow I feel like that's almost our most important work, but that's a whole nother dialogue. Kathy, would you see using in the state level an active listening tool as kind of a training with the committees you lead?
Well, I don't know. Maybe what I was going to say earlier is that I think the website's wonderful, and I think that it gives us all sorts of a good basis from which to start about, you know, what direction we need to go in, what we need to look at, all of those things that, you know, will start this conversation more in earnest in the next, you know, month or so. But as far as active listening, I kind of have to agree with what Becky's saying. I think that it really has to be positioned correctly to not be off-putting, just as you said. So that said, I think everybody needs it and everybody can benefit from it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think that part of our challenge will be, or not part of it won't be challenging so much as we just want to get it right about, you know, what's most appropriate on the state level, what's most appropriate on the local level, and, you know, and so, you know, it's a lot to take in and a lot to figure out, but it's a great basis from which to start, like I said.
That's great.
On the subject of listening, I obviously come from a particular perspective, given that my background is in communication and having taught classes on listening, like whole classes. I think that the listening framework is so valuable to this work. And there's a way actually to reframe the whole quest for data-driven decision-making from the perspective of listening. Like, you don't get data without taking other people's lives seriously. So you don't even actually have data without listening processes. And there are really compelling scholars that basically resituate the whole process of social change from the perspective of listening. And so, like, I don't know, I love it, and would love to, you know, contribute some of that if you want help with lifting on the community of practice around listening, because there's a lot of resources beyond just active listening around critical listening and listening across difference, and there's a lot of really neat scholarship on that stuff. So
yeah, I think, this is a really good topic, but just to close it out, I what I'm hearing is that it isn't even the resources as much as the role of the person who then presents it. So what, in a way, what's off-putting is that what I'm hearing is that Becky to say, okay, let me tell you now the culture we're going to set up here, which is going to be, she wouldn't say it that way. She'd say it in some real nice way, but it's sort of the sense of who has the right to bring that, to teach what is the right culture. And so that's what we have to think through. What, you know, how is someone named who can convey that into it? So it's quite a challenge to think.
Right. Well, it's a paradox, because literally you are not listening when you say, "Hey, we're all going to listen better in this particular way," right? And so how do you teach listening but do it in an invitational fashion, right? That models the kinds of practices that you actually want, right? As opposed to just standing somewhere and lecturing, like, "All right, kids, we better listen to each other," right?
Yeah.
It's a teaching challenge for sure, but there's ways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is good. This is really good. I think that we'll think of something even like a train the trainer model, where we invite every COC that we're working with to send somebody who could get trained so they are comfortable with doing those things. Because I think it has to be done in vivo, and it has to be done by the people who be the purveyors of that. So, but that's more to think about. It's actually helpful to, not to divert us completely, but you could see how iterative that will still be. I do want to hear from Utah also a little bit on what you're thinking, Dee, on using the tools, or who you're sharing with, and how you might see them using them.
Well, as you know, Jamie, we're going through a massive transition with our home service system over the next 6 to 8 months, and all of our focus is very much on that transition. We're changing from a large single shelter model to multiple resource centers. Along with that, we're fully implementing a coordinated entry system that has been in development for a long time, and it still has a lot to be worked out. So it'll be a minute before we're going to be able to put any of this to use. However, because there's so much focus on this right now, there's a lot of discussion about what we need to have in place aside from just the resource centers and the actual services that are being provided. It's how to look at the data, who needs to be involved, how the COC needs to be overseeing all of this. And I see this being the key to help guide those discussions for when they're ready to hold the data down that has been collected by these new resource centers and these new providers in new ways that we have never done before, that this will hopefully frame their understanding of what that needs to look like. I'm excited to have this because finally I can point to something and say, it's all collected for you. Let's get on board, look at this now, get invested in it, and let's just make this the Bible for everything that we want to do moving forward.
So it's a little nuance in every locality, really. Yeah. Any other site want to share, Melissa, Indiana? I don't know if you have ideas, bringing it forth there. Maybe Melissa has no ideas. Melissa's left. There you have it. All right, Sarah, let's go to your data maturity assessment tool, which is the first one. You'll see why we put that first. It's a really great tool.
So I'm wondering if maybe I could take the screen. I have the link on my computer. It might just be easier for the purposes of walking through it. Is that possible? Oh, become the presenter.
Yeah. So you want me to make you a presenter, Sarah?
I can just start. Oh yeah, if you don't mind.
1 second. All right, you should be good.
Okay, I have the link here. Oh wait, I do have the link. Here we go. I guess it kind of feels important to, let me just click on it. It feels important to like ask, like, does that term mean anything to people, data maturity? Are you guys familiar with the term?
It does now. It wouldn't have before working with you guys.
Yeah,
I agree.
Jim?
I think it's not the best word, but every other word that exists in common parlance is the wrong word, so I suggest you keep using it.
Okay, that's helpful. Anyone else? Okay, so let me just talk just a minute about this concept. So, because it's sort of the underpinning of the tool and what we mean by data maturity. So really what we're kind of borrowing from this conceptual framework from the services sector and health sector that is really a framework that's used to assess, you know, the degree to which communities or providers or systems are sort of equipped to incorporate data into various levels of decision making and planning. And so it really helps to sort of then identify, like, what are those conditions that are necessary for being able to maximize your use of data so that you can optimize systems of care for the people that we're working with. And so in theory, then, like, if you were at the highest level of data maturity, you would be a system that, or a provider that's using data to drive all decisions. You're continuously reviewing data quality, right, to assess, you know, is the information that we have actually telling us an accurate story and a comprehensive story? Do we need more data to tell that story? And then you're incorporating that information into all levels of system planning. And then the other important piece of this is that that's being driven by leaders who are working collaboratively and using multiple data in order to make decisions, drive change. And so as that being the foundation, the tool was really created to help communities just quickly, collaboratively reflect on, you know, what are our local data practices now? Again, identified, you know, in the tool, those assessment components that communities are assessing themselves again are really those conditions for effective database decision making and using data to optimize our services. But ultimately, the value of the tool is to really motivate discussion on that reflective process, right? Like reflecting on the results of that. It's a very brief assessment, really, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but it's really to motivate discussion and dialogue on those local practices and to instigate action areas for improvement. And so the idea is that it's not just one entity doing this, like taking the tool, not just like a COC lead or one agency the assessment in isolation, but really sort of driving this collaborative process and instigating a collaborative process. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, because really, if you're going to use data and use data to drive change to any degree, it's really important to have that level of collaboration. It takes more than one entity to really come up with and draw down conclusions from the data, right? Like one person or one entity in isolation is not going to really have a complete picture and be able to draw conclusions about the story that data is telling. So it's important that for that purpose, but also because really it means that there's more players at the table who can reflect on those and support, making changes through the action, through doing some sort of prioritizing action on some of the areas for improvement. So that's the basis for the tool. Let me just go and show you the various components here. So this is in the HUD Exchange, but it actually hasn't been embedded in HUD Exchange yet. So we did some user testing at the last NHSCC conference, which is super helpful. And I'm still working with our internal team to make some of those suggested changes. And a lot of the changes were less about the structure of the tool and more about just how to reword certain, to make sure that we're getting the language right, because language is obviously really critical in something like this, and we're getting the terminology right and the questions are clear. And the only way that we could find that out is by doing mass user testing, which we've done, and now we're kind of consolidating that feedback and embedding the changes over the next few months. So this is evolving. So all the assessment questions are organized for major components, which are data quality, data analytics capacity, data leadership, and data-informed system improvement. This whole assessment takes literally about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. And I'm just going to quickly walk through the questions here so I can show you how to get to the next phase. We don't need to read all the questions because you can do that on your own if you do choose to take it. But it walks through all of these questions. And it's pretty simple. Take it, sitting down and take it quickly. Let me just to the end here, sorry. And at the end, it will give you, it lets you know if you've completed all of the sections here. If you haven't, it'll say incomplete, and it makes you go back and fill those in, kind of like taxes online, and it gives you the summary of what you've done and what you haven't. So after you do that, you go to view results, and there's 3 steps to the process. So step 1 is it will give you a summary based on how you answered those questions. It'll give you a summary of like where you're excelling and where you potentially need some improvement. And you can summarize that and print that out. So that's step 1, is looking at your results. Step 2 is an opportunity to prioritize. So based on that printout, working collaboratively to say, hey, where are 3 areas that we want to improve to really increase our data maturity or be more effective data users in our community? And so this lists out all of your areas for improvement, and it asks you to pick 1 to 3 issues to really target in on. Not that you can't work on more than that, but it's really about focus and progress. And so we've asked people to pick at least 1 to 3. You choose 3, and step 3 then, so step 1 is reviewing, and step 3 is prioritization. Step 3 here is, in relation to those 3 prioritized areas, we're linking you up with some helpful supporting resources that we're creating a large catalog of resources that are related to that area for improvement. And collaboratively, then you can work as a community to download the action plan template and actually set some goals and strategic actions for making improvement on each of those areas. So there's like a template action plan for each of those goals. So again, step 1, then you go through the assessment, it's brief, but the value is really then this process of saying, looking at your results, collaboratively prioritizing 1 to 3 areas to focus on. And then in step 3, sitting down and doing some action planning, leveraging some of these supporting resources if and where you need it. That's that. Again, this is still evolving, so if you have any ideas creatively about like how it could be structured differently or be more useful or adaptable, that's awesome. Or if you're getting into the questions and things just make sense, that's also very valuable feedback at this point.
Does anyone see this? Like we're seeing it as like a first step, then every 6 months kind of step or something. But anyone see themselves using it?
This is Andrea. I would definitely see working with a HMIS/data committee on this for the balance of state. One of the things that HUD put out that has been very beneficial is the balance of state toolkit. And they broke it down into different sections, and one of them being the HMIS and data. And I know for the balance of state, there's a lot of work, maybe some work in the data quality area, but a lot of work needed in the capacity to use it. And I think that this would be really effective in some of the challenges that I know we have to then have some additional resources for it.
Great. And I think when we were creating this, we actually saw some of the biggest value just in having like a resource library related to some of these hot topics. Like, HUD is continually, and we are, asking of ourselves to be documented, but we haven't really disseminated a lot of best practice materials all in one place to actually do that. So I'm hoping that we can grow this resource library too. So if you have great resources that would like to be included in this, we'd love to continue to expand that library as well. So great to have it.
This is Becky. I just wanted to jump in and say this is super exciting too. I know I keep saying that, but we just took the first draft of our performance management plan to our HMIS committee meeting yesterday, if today is still Wednesday. And one of the things they brought up was it's great to come up with measures that we want to be looking at and keeping tabs on like at a quarterly basis, but what's really going to drive change is having the performance improvement strategies in place. And so we're just getting into the beginning stages of saying like who's going to be responsible for driving that. And in some of our continuums, we have like a brand new governing board for one of them, and they're just learning all things COC and homelessness in a lot of ways. So having even just a template for the action plan in addition to all these resources is really going to be helpful for moving that to the next level of, okay, so now we've come to agreement on measures, we're looking at them at a regular basis, now how do we actually impact them and improve them? So this is really exciting. Thank you so much.
That's great. And this will also continue to be iterative, as Sarah said, and will be updated in the near future. But it will look like this. The updates will change it drastically, right, Sarah? Any updates you have in mind?
Yeah, so it won't change it drastically. It just sort of changes to clarify, sharpen the statement up. But Becky, what's interesting, so to your point about that performance management plan template that we sent out, that's actually going to be expanding as well. I have a meeting with HUD and APP tomorrow actually, because they're planning on doing some performance improvement planning, I think videos, and with using that template. But what we realized is kind of from it, because that's kind of evolving too. And to your point, what's missing is, like, I don't know, there's a link embedded in the website that to these briefs on strategies for system performance improvement. And what felt like it was missing from that performance management template, there is a performance improvement planning section of that template, but it doesn't go in depth in terms of like, okay, when you're looking at like where is your catalog of strategies that you can identify by looking at some of those up-down changes on your performance measures. And so we'll probably be expanding on that. But anyway, I'll let you know if we make any changes to that or an addendum to that document.
That was great. Thank you. Awesome.
So this data maturity assessment tool is the first link, again, on the WordPress URL. Rachel, are you still on? I hope.
Yes. Yep.
So Rachel does have the this PowerPoint that has the URL link on it, and that will get sent out right at the end of this call. The very last thing we wanted to do is just a quick, every call we like to do research updates, and I guess that really should go back to me now, Ross. Thank goodness you're here, Ross. Thank you.
One second. Find you.
I'm here.
There you go.
Thank you. So one of the things we want to do is also make sure that every community practice, or almost every community practice, we're sharing any updated research that we've come across that we find to be interesting. Is in this actual article, journal article, or HUD brief. It's in the HUD PDNR site, but it's actually attached to the same email that Rachel's going to send out with the PowerPoint. So that will be there also. But it's really to have you look at, when you look at a long brief like this, it's daunting, right? Because it's 40 pages, and it's showing you a lot of background information, which may or not be useful. And this particular study, rapid rehousing, it was using the data from the family options study. So we know that's outdated a bit in the sense that the rapid rehousing was then very different than it is now. It was 2009, 2010, 2011. But the follow-through they had with the families in that study gave them a lot of insights for us to then, as with all research evidence, just add it into our own treasure chest of thinking around rapid rehousing. And so I just wanted to highlight with you essentially how I read these long papers, because who has the time to read all these? Nobody. Well, students do, but most of us don't. But you definitely want to get a sense of the data. You always want to know what data was used in the study. So here they're telling you the family option study data that they did, and you want to understand what did they do. So that's your data methodology framework for you to go through it, because you want to understand what they were looking at, why they were looking at it, and what they used to actually assess their research questions. Then you could kind of pick and choose. So here, if you want to do the overview of the study, this is also, I don't know, table of contents for me is not as helpful, but anyway, it's really zooming down to see how to read these long reports to get at what it is you are looking for, which is really the results that they've seen. And so you're going to flip through a lot of stuff you don't actually need to review. And always in these papers, there's a place called, sometimes there's a discussion section, then conclusion section before the exhibits. And that's where I go down to find out what they've concluded. I also read the discussion section, because that's the conclusions also often briefer, and you want the discussion section. So I'm just doing it here. They don't have a discussion section, right? This is just their last section on one of their research questions, but here's their conclusion. And what you're able to do, we're going to look at the PowerPoint, and Jason Rodriguez was the analyst on this. He works with us at Cloudburst, and he sent over what he saw as the highlights, and I'm going to go to those in the PowerPoint, which you have. But when you're looking at this here, again, this to me is what's important, what is the takeaway? The other thing I don't see here is limitations. It's always good to look at limitations of a study. But it's a way to get research and really start perusing it, so we can add it to our own evidence base. We will spend more time with, I'm looking for the PowerPoint now. We'll spend more time with this when we're, oh, it's, I think, an Adobe. Yeah, here it is.
Well, Jamie, you were thinking of having this. You were thinking of having this be the focus of the March session, right? The rapid rehousing evaluation and CES evaluation.
Yes, we're going to spend. We're not going to spend more time with this particular research document, but we're going to do a summary in the next session about rapid rehousing findings, because there's not enough evidence, but there's some evidence base. It's expanded a bit, and we feel like everybody's invested in rapid rehousing. We want to actually bring to the forefront a summary of what that looks like and how that could impact both how you're monitoring and evaluating, but what variables would you want to look at with your data to be really assessing things in rapid rehousing that we want to be looking at, vulnerable families, like what's correlated with the return to homelessness. So the summary here that Jason really found to be important out of his analysis is essentially sometimes families in rapid rehousing are using rapid rehousing as a bridge to Section 8 vouchers, and sometimes not. If that was one of the goals for rapid rehousing, it's articulated especially at that time and for this research study. Also, as we know that there's great variation in the type of rapid rehousing and the duration of rapid rehousing that's done, which means this summary, it's not a single uniform program. Even in any one particular city or jurisdiction, we know that's really important. And in doing that, they stated that they're taking the data and they're going to do a typology. It's in that conclusion when you get the paper to read. You're going to just go down to read the conclusion. And they're going to take the data, and they do have data from Salt Lake City and Minneapolis, 2 sites of the rapid rehousing. I think there were 12 sites. I forget how many in the study. Those 2 sites actually use progressive engagement in their rapid rehousing approach. So they're going to actually use the data that they have to create a typology for beginning to assess types of programs that had better outcomes, which is going to be the first evidence we have that progressive engagement actually is a very much more effective approach than others. So this study in and of itself is nothing really anything riveting or hugely doesn't change anything that we know or don't know about rapid rehousing, but it's another addition to evidence which we want to be building again in our own practice, and also to see what's coming, because to me that's super exciting, right, to get a typology on the types of rapid rehousing programs and how those types of programs impact the outcomes. And they specifically reference progressive engagement. So this is really just a pass on this particular summary document, and we do hope to see everybody next month. Wow, it's March already, March 20th. And we heard from, I think Margot or Becky, someone said they thought the coordinated entry system evaluation topic would be really important. So we're going to work on that, as well as the rapid rehousing evaluation modeling, because that is what comes off of the summary of the evidence, right? That's what you base your monitoring evaluation on. You want to know the evidence base. So we don't have a lot of evidence base on coordinated entry because we're still figuring it out across the country, but we do have evidence base to share on rapid rehousing. And any topics? Yep.
Oh, I just had a comment about that research. So one thing that was really striking to me, and it was hard to discern like what was already reported in the Families Options study and just was being re-reported, or what was new in that research. But like, it just underscored, one thing really underscored for me that like why it's so important for us to continue to bring research and science to practice, and how that just, like, it's really hard, and like I feel like it's not, like, I don't know, we just need to like continue to work together to figure out how to do that more, because it restated a couple of things that were really important, but one that stuck out was like the risks of return. So we've been hearing a lot about risks of returns immediately following exit, which is why we track, you know, whether people are returning 12 months after exit, 24 months after exit, 6 months after exit. But in this study, they found that the risk of that over half of the people that returned in the first month. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, that is like such an important like piece of information to think about how we design programs and aftercare programs, like what is going on in that first month and what needs to change to make sure that 50% of the people that return don't return in the first month. Anyway, it was just like one of those figures that stuck out to me that was like felt so important, you know, to think about as a practitioner. And it just got me thinking, like, how are we linking science and research to practice continuously? Like, we're doing it in this group, but it feels like there are important pieces of information like that like stop you in your tracks and think, oh wow, that is so directly related to practice and how we could potentially reflect on our exit strategies or aftercare strategies to like tackle that. So anyway, just a comment.
Right, and it is why it's a part of a dialogue, because it's also, this was again when Rapid Housing first started, so that these findings don't necessarily reflect anybody's program or even these same programs. Sites, but it's an indication of what you want to look at. You want to be using your own data to see what is going on in your own data for those who return within 30 days or 60 days or within before in whatever period they're returning. And so it's like to me it's a multifaceted discussion to always have, to really look at the data and the evidence base and understand where it came from, what those limitations are, but see how it can lead you to doing what you want to be looking at internally within your own data, and how you want to drill down on those data reports so that you can be assessing your own by the variation of your own rapid housing program. You can't do it system-wide. You have to do it by rapid housing programs, and you have to look at the numbers of people in those programs to make sure you have a big enough number. You're going to be doing assessment of outcomes. So all of those things are part of the evaluation discussion, and it's about growing. That's data maturity. It's a big important angle of it. Data literacy, data maturity data literacy is like one of the big pillars, right, of understanding that. And you guys are the data leaders to go forth and do that. So we want to supply you with tools to do that. And this how you bring out research and evidence base is a really key part of it. Like Sarah said, like what findings really got you thinking, and then what are you going to do with that thinking that you were sparked by? So we're super excited. You have this now in hand. Any ideas you have, both for any of these tools, also for the community practice itself. Again, we're going to carry this on through September each month, and so we have some topics in mind, but not a lot. We're really happy to get feedback. We're going to bring this URL out to the other states who are not on the call, like Orlando and Prince George's and San Diego, who've been on the call in the past. So we're also inviting Sacramento. Any site that we're working with around the data tools and the potential use of dashboards, we're going to bring into the community practice, because we feel like it's a rich environment for everyone and that cross-sharing. So any other parting thoughts before we part our ways?
Mm-hmm. And Jamie, just another thought on scheduling. I know we had debated back and forth on whether we should have the sessions be 1 hour or 1 hour and a half. I don't know if people have thoughts on that going forward.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Does silence mean that nobody is here anymore, so it should be 1 hour?
They both seem fine with me. It depends on the content.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Super. Okay, so I guess we'll leave it at the 1 hour and a half for most of them, unless it's something that only merits a shorter time.
Great. So this Mary, go ahead. I guess that's the thing. This Mary did 1 hour and 20 minutes. Anyway, and thank you everyone. Thank you everyone helped out for today. And bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.